Welcome to the Cowtown Cats Lacrosse Podcast, where we talk all things Panther City Lacrosse Club. Now here are your hosts, Nicholas and Andy.
Welcome everyone back to Cowtown Cats Lacrosse Podcast. This episode, we get to talk about the upcoming games number 2 and number 3 for Panther City Lacrosse. We get kind of a doubleheader weekend, or what I call a doubleheader weekend. A game on Friday night and a game on Saturday night. So welcome back everybody. I'm Nicholas, once again joined by Andy.
Hello, hello.
Or should you go by Andrew now? Andy, Andrew?
We'll stick with Andy. I'll throw in an Andrew to keep people honest every now and then.
Right, throw us off the scent every once in a while. Keep it professional.
Mm-hmm.
But so this weekend, our Panther City Lacrosse's second and third games, and instead of having it a week apart or a few days apart, it is literally one day after another. Friday night is game number 2. Saturday night is game number 3. As we mentioned in previous episode, it's not just an easy, hey, here's one game and then we'll stop at this place on the way back and play there the next day. Nope, it's Las Vegas and then back home against Colorado, which makes zero sense at all.
Yep, that's the roughest possible back-to-back scenario.
Right. So yeah, we're going to cover both of those games. Starting off with game number 2, a familiar team, in this early season that Panther City is going against, and they'll be going against the newest expansion, of course, Las Vegas Desert Dogs. This game will have a lot of eyes on it because not only will it be considered one of the games of the week, it will also be televised on ESPN2, gaining a lot of eyes that normally probably don't watch lacrosse and tuning in to see what it's all about because it's a new Las Vegas team. So that'll be exciting. I obviously cannot wait to see kind of their layout there. I watched the Vegas Golden Knights hockey team, so I kind of know the stadium, but it'll be interesting to see them convert it into this Desert Dog kind of environment.
Huh? Do you know if they play in the Vegas Convention Center?
No, so they actually it's a stadium that they specifically built for the Golden Knights to play in.
Okay.
It's smaller, so especially if you compare to like the American Airlines Center, it's definitely smaller, but they built it up more, so everything just feels a lot closer.
Okay, interesting.
So it definitely has its uniqueness to it. Obviously, it has a lot of things themed towards the Las Vegas Knights, but I think with this new team coming in, it'll kind of set the standard right for Las Vegas, for the Desert Dogs to kind of feel that home atmosphere. And I hope they get a good turnout, to be honest. I mean, we talk about season openers and home openers and this and that for every team. Again, a success in Las Vegas is honestly a success for everybody.
Yep. Hopefully we can send a big crowd home with the loss.
Right. Obviously, from our point of view, we want to, Okay, so we'll get into that as our expectations. My expectations for this game, unfortunately, I want to say it's going to be another close game.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the energy of being their first home game, the energy of just being there in Las Vegas, being that insignia for the NLL in Las Vegas. Honestly, I could see this game starting off really bad for Panther City.
Yeah, I could see it going either way. Part of me feels like if it's a blowout, it's going to be in favor of Las Vegas, and if it's a close one, then who knows what might happen. That third quarter of that first game did give me hope that the Desert Dogs still have some kinks to work out on their own, though. Seeing how their goalie performed in the fourth quarter makes me wonder whether they're going to have him start this upcoming game.
I feel like that's probably going to happen just based on, I know you don't get a full games experience and a full games film to see, okay, is this the guy we're going to go with? But considering what happened in the first 3 quarters and then what happened in the last quarter and a half, you have to kind of take that into consideration and say to yourself, okay, well, even though they were ahead by a lot, and still to be able to keep them scoreless in the fourth quarter alone, I think that kind of solidifies his job. I mean, they're a young team. They're still trying to figure out who's going to be in what position, who's going to be
Right.
starter, who's going to be not. And so I think that really bodes well for the goalie for Las Vegas to say, hey, maybe I didn't play the whole game, but this is what I did do, so I at least deserve that shot.
Right. So yeah, we'll see if they end up making that switch or stick to the original game plan for
Yeah,
starters.
and I like I said, I get the feeling like they could come out with a hot start. I can definitely see into the first quarter them being up, 3-1, 4-1, almost that kind of feeling of just the hypeness of it. And then almost like the first game, again, my expectation is as the game goes on, then the more experienced team, the Panther City in themselves, will start to figure it out more as the game goes on, and start to kind of, hey, that was fun, that was a good start. Now it's time to get to business.
Yeah, and like you said, like the defense really helped us get back into that first game. I do think that Nick Damute is going to have to improve his play. I think his save percentage wasn't too great. It was maybe hovering around like the low 70% or something. If he could boost that up to 80%, somewhere in that area.
And it comes down to his play, obviously. And as we talked about in the last episode, it comes down to face-offs. They
Yes.
have to figure out a way to start. I don't expect them to win every face-off, but be competitive in every face-off.
hmm
And that's not to say that they weren't competitive in some of the face-offs, but when it feels like about what 80% of the
yeah,
face-offs,
it felt a bit too automatic. Like, oh, well, we know which way it's going.
right?
So,
You got the feeling like it's just not happening in our favor. So it'll be interesting to see if Burton takes all the face-offs again, or if they again switch people out, maybe try
mhm.
some other people. I really think, again, I'm not a coach. I'm never going to be in that position. But if I was there, I would just be like, hey, if it's not going our way, and we get in this rut of, especially right off the bat, if we're losing all these face-offs and we're just down by a couple points, we really need that to kind of turn the tide a little bit more. And so you
hmm
almost think to yourself, maybe you should start trying some other people out, especially because it's early in the season.
hmm
So
Absolutely.
yeah, we'll see what happens. I think it's going to be a fun game. I think it's going to be a close game. Um, I mean, if I was to guess a final score, who, man, I mean, the last game ended 13-11. I could see this end up being a defensive struggle towards the end of the game, and be something simple as like 10-8, where it's like maybe 9-8 late into the fourth, and then maybe Panther City scores one more to kind of seal the deal on it. But like you said, you could almost see the other side where maybe Vegas comes out so hot and so just hyped up on being home, that they go on this crazy run, and you never know what's going to happen. But
Yeah, it's interesting that you went the low scoring route because I'm actually going the opposite. I think it'll be a bit more not too crazy, but I think I'd like to think if it's in that teens range, like maybe like 16 to 15 or something, then Panther City will come out on top.
right.
Otherwise, to me, the only other alternative that I can think of is a Desert Dogs blowout. Just because they did have their share of turnovers and everything in that last game, but I think they've got a pretty solid new coach, and
Hmm.
if he can, if he manages to get them to play a full 60-minute game with discipline, then
Yeah,
it might be at our expense. Then again, we're going to be raising our gameplay as well, so yeah,
yeah.
should be a fun one.
And like you mentioned, a full 60 minutes. There's definitely, I mean, you take out, if you look at the last game they went against each other, you take out maybe a little bit of the second and a little bit of the third, where Panther City went on that 4-0 run. and then they start off the third really hot. You take those out, and next thing you know, you have, even in the last game, Las Vegas in the thick of things where they, possibly could have even been ahead at some point. So yeah, it'll be a test of, can they play a full game? Can they, can each side kind of settle down, not only for them on offense and defense, but for us? Can we calm them down and bring them down to play our game? So,
Right.
well, that is the first game of the weekend. Like I said, that's Friday night. Be sure to check it in on ESPN2. It'll be televised on there. The next game is the next home game, and it's a quick turnaround, but it's the next night against the defending champion Colorado Mammoth. The Colorado Mammoth did not start the year off the way they had hoped.
No, they did
Defending
not.
champions, you would think they, riding on that high still. They went up to Saskatchewan, and Saskatchewan, I think a lot of people maybe underrated them. They thought, oh, they still have some missing pieces. They're still not, in that upper echelon where they should be yet, but they're working towards it. And unfortunately, yeah, Colorado just, I don't know what happened. I really don't. I mean,
I think,
I watched highlights of that game, but they ended up losing 18-6 in Saskatchewan.
yeah, there was, people and pundits will joke about there being a championship hangover. That definitely looked like a
Oh my
championship
gosh.
hangover. They fell into a 6-0 hole early and just could never crawl out of it because each time they would score a few more goals, guess what? So it's Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
And they switched goalies, I think, just a little over midway through the game, and that didn't really do them any good ultimately. It's interesting because their starting goalie Dylan Ward, he was the Finals MVP
Hmm.
last season in the championship round, and yeah, just something about maybe Saskatchewan was hungrier in front of their home fans. Maybe Colorado kind of underestimated how difficult it would be, or maybe it was just one of those nights for them. But in any case, it wasn't pretty.
Well, yeah, and it could have been a combination of things. I think championship hangover, yeah, obviously is a real thing. But I also think, yeah, they kind of underestimated them, thought to themselves, okay, well, it's the first game of the year. We should be able to keep it close, and then we can kind of, get back in the groove of things. But man, like I said, they didn't even, it's almost like they didn't even show up. And you mentioned about them trading out the goalie. It's almost, sometimes I feel like teams do that almost as a psychological thing. They don't want their
Hmm.
goalie, or they don't want their player, whoever it is, to feel so down and so just defeated by the end of the night. It's almost like a mercy rule where they say, okay, look, this is not your game. This is not your day. This is not your game. We need to pull you out. Obviously we talked about with Las Vegas, in that home opener with us, 3 quarters in, they decide, hey, this is not your game. We got to try out the other guy.
Right.
So, and I don't think that's what Colorado was doing. I don't think they were like purposely trying to say, hey, we're going to switch out your position or anything like that, or lose your spot. But you almost have to kind of like keep their pride intact, I guess, is the best way to
Hmm.
put it.
Yeah, and at that point, I think they figured they weren't gonna have a like 8 or 10 goal fourth quarter all of a sudden the way they things had been going. So all things considered is probably the right thing to do. Though it'll probably make them hungrier for Saturday.
So, yeah, and that, going into expectations for this game against Colorado, I really don't know what to expect, to be honest. I think depending on how Friday night goes, it could directly affect Saturday night.
Hmm.
If Friday night happens and Las Vegas comes out and just, like you said, almost beats the crap out of us, uh, then we're going to be extremely hungry Saturday to prove a point.
Hmm.
Colorado coming off this massive loss has people questioning them, has people wondering, what the heck happened? Was last year, you start having those early season questions of, was last year fluke? Was it just a one off? And so for them, again, yeah, they want to come in, wanting that win just to kind of get everybody off their back. So it'll
Hmm.
be very interesting to see what happens. I could
One
see
thing.
this. Good.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
No, well, I was just gonna say I could see this game You talked about Vegas being an offensive back and forth. I could see this game being an offensive back and forth where both offenses are trying to prove something. They're trying to say, Colorado especially, they're trying to say, look, we only scored 6 points last week. That was a fluke. We're here to score points and win games. And then Panther City at the same time, I mean, obviously in front of a home crowd, they want to put on a show too.
Hmm.
So I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see what happens Friday night leading into Saturday. But for Saturday, if I was to guess as far as what the final score would be, that would be a game where I could see it being like a 17-15 kind of game. High scoring, high action, back and forth almost throughout the whole game. What do you think?
Hmm. I think honestly, I think it'll kind of like what you said. It'll hinge on how that second game, the previous night goes. Um, I imagine if we lose to the Desert Dogs that night, well, I have a feeling that we would win game three. Yeah, I would say our saving grace is probably having the game at home because you think there's got to be some amount of back-to-back fatigue in such a physical game. I mentioned Caputo's injury
Hmm.
previously. I don't know if it's something that he's able to shake off by the time this doubleheader starts or not. Yeah, it'll be interesting. And like we mentioned, goalies have some pride to them. I'm sure Dylan Ward wants to have a better game against us. Damute will want to have a better game for us. So
Hmm.
yeah, this one, I think it could go either way, but it'll largely depend on how we do against the Desert Dogs in that game too. I would love to see best case scenario a 3 game winning streak
Right?
after this Saturday would be amazing.
Oh yeah, and with the games close like that, it's good to if you got all three wins right off the bat. It's like, hey, you're riding that high right there. What's your guess for a final score on that one for Colorado?
I'll say I'm thinking somewhere in the ballpark of the first game against the Desert Dogs actually. I'd say somewhere 13-10,
Okay.
14-12, somewhere in that range. I'll go with the I got to go with my Panther City Lacrosse Club. So I'll choose them to win.
I mean, yeah.
Colorado had their time in the limelight.
Well, and we mentioned in a previous episode, Panther City beat them twice last year, so
Right. Yeah, it was a good matchup.
there's no reason to say we can't beat them again, especially this early on in the year. Yeah, I'm hoping for two home wins. Um, we'll see what happens. I thankfully I will be good enough to go by then. I will be there. I hope to see a lot of people out there. We mentioned before Colorado is a good traveling team. They do have fans that show up at
Right.
their games, so we'll have to probably put up with a few Colorado Mammoth fans there.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, I mean it would be great if we get the next two wins. Like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if for some reason we end up losing in Vegas. Just again, the hype of the home crowd, the hype of a new franchise.
Right.
We'll see what happens, but it's a quick turnaround. It's two games right after the other, and then we'll have. I believe there's a short break after that, at least for a week.
Hmm.
I'd have to look at the scheduling, but I can't wait. Again, I can't wait for Friday night's game. Like I said, nationally televised on ESPN2. Saturday night's game is going to be, a good home game. I can't wait to be there.
Yeah, and that game against the Mammoth is essentially Panther City's last home game for 2 months.
Oh
So
yeah, so that starts the away. Oh
so
my
yeah,
gosh.
if we can at least split this back to back coming up, ideally
Yes.
win both of them, that'd be really good to build some momentum before this road trip that feels like it's going to be forever.
Yes, and we'll have to definitely work out a way to catch one of those games. Get together and catch one of those games while they're away.
Hmm.
Before I forget, I do want to shout out to Panther City again this Saturday, December 15th. If you are going to the game, they are doing their collection for Toys for Tots. So if
Yes,
you
yeah,
bring
the
a
holiday
toy,
heroes.
yeah, if you bring a toy to the game, you can donate it there. And it's for a great cause. I actually worked with Toys for Tots when I used to live in Waco at the bank there, and great organization, great people. We always had a good time collecting for them. So if you're going out to the game, be sure to donate. Hopefully, again, it'll end in a win. Hopefully, it ends in 2 wins after this weekend, and we can start off to a good 3-0 start.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
cool. Well, yeah, that's our quick rundown for the upcoming games. Games number 2, number 3. Be sure to check in. Obviously, next week we'll go over both of those games, kind of our breakdowns of what happened, our highs and lows of each. But yeah, once again, this is Cowtown Cats Lacrosse podcast. I'm Nicholas.
And I am Andy.
Andy. Yeah, and we will catch you guys later. Till next time.
All right, see y'all.